Okay, so we're back. Hopefully some of you will find this. Um, we appear to have had a rather catastrophic crash, um, but that's all right. We just keep going. Not a problem. So um, anyhow, we'll see if anybody can find this here. There we go, and we're back. So, as I was saying, the current issue or the current context is that there was a plan, an exit plan, in order, to make the next leap of the diaspora. You've seen uh, the move from Spain, from Eastern Europe to Spain, then back into Poland, then into Germany, to the UK, to the States. What's next? And so that was the plan. But as I was saying, it's readily apparent that something changed. It's very obvious that the Chinese made it very clear that that wasn't going to happen, that they were not going to sign up for this program of economic mutual benefit. And this isn't terribly surprising if you know very much about Chinese history and the Chinese national culture. And so, yeah, and I wouldn't get too worked up about, the stream having problems or anything. It looks to me, honestly, like the streaming software had updated not that long ago. And as we've talked about it, nothing works anymore. And so now let's get to the question of what's going on in Hong Kong. If you have spoken to people either in China or in Hong Kong, one thing that you readily learn is that what you're seeing in the Western media is almost entirely false. It's not really relevant to what's happening. It's not really relevant to the way that most of the people feel. It might surprise you to know that the sympathies of a lot of the residents of Hong Kong, both of European extract and Chinese extract, are in favor of the Chinese position. And the behavior of the protesters is not very well supported by the populace at large. And so when you see all of these American flags waving, when you see all of this U.S. Come and intervene and help out and all that sort of thing, it becomes very, very clear that what we are seeing in Hong Kong right now is effectively a color revolution. And color revolutions are fake. They're run by the CIA. They are supported by Globalism Inc. And they are essentially utilized to financially rape and pillage those countries. We've seen the same thing in Ukraine recently. We saw the same thing in Russia in the 90s. And so what you're seeing in the attempt of the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Senate to intervene with regards to Hong Kong has nothing to do, nothing whatsoever to do with U.S. national interests. It's not in the U.S. national interest. What you're seeing there is globalism, Inc. and the diaspora attempting to strike back at China for its refusal to bend the knee and open its markets and open its arms to the invasion that was prepared. Now, keep in mind that there's a big difference between the diaspora and the people of Israel. Regardless of what you think about the Israelis, and there are reasons to be dubious. It's as I commented on the blog today. If you look at their politics, it's very clear it's not exactly the Wakanda of the intellectual elite of humanity, right? But what you do see in Israel is a bona fide attempt to become a real nation state, to build, to not live as financial parasites dependent upon other people. And that's a laudable goal. It's something that any nationalist can reasonably support for any people. Yes, I'm very aware of all the issues related to Palestine and everything else. Okay? I mean, one of the things we're going to talk about here in a little bit, the importance of preserving knowledge and leather books and Castalia Deluxe. Well, as it happens, one of my old leather books is from 1858, I think, and it's Early Travels in Palestine, comprising the narratives of Arulf, Willibald, Bernard, Seewulf, Sigurd, Benjamin of Tudela, Sir John Mondeville, de la Broquiere, and Mondrel, edited by Thomas Wright, published by Henry Bone, back in London, back a long time ago. This is why I am very amused whenever I'm talking to some Israeli pushing the Hasbara propaganda. There's no such thing as Palestine. Really? My book that says Early Travels, is it Early Travels? What is it? Early Travels in Palestine is significantly older than your state. So, let's not, let's not try to fool anybody here. We know what's going on. But part of not being fooled is understanding that there's no reason, there's no, no, I'm not going to share the link again. I don't know if that had anything to do with it breaking down. And so if you look at the situation in Hong Kong, it's very, very clear. It's not organic, and it's being pushed by foreign interests that are not friendly to the United States. And so, President Trump should absolutely veto that bill. Is he going to? Probably not, but he should. It wouldn't make any difference if he did or not, of course, because only one single person, and I'm going to guess it was Ron Paul, voted against that act, which again is no business of the United States. The Hong Kong is literally called Hong Kong SAR, Special Autonomous Region. And what that means is that it is already part of China. The whole one country, two systems goes away in 2050. So it's already done. The situation, it's already over. And a lot of people don't realize that China is not, or Hong Kong is no longer wealthy in comparison to China. The other Chinese coastal cities, Shenzhen and the others, are much, much wealthier at this point in time than Hong Kong. In fact, that's part of the reason why the Hong Kong protesters, who are mostly students, are so angry, is because they have been bypassed by the Chinese. You know, they're living in a terrible, cramped little city that is, and their economic future is looking grim. You know, the Chinese always have a very colorful, they have a flair for colorful terms. And one term that they used to use increasingly less often is sea turtle. And the sea turtles were students who went and studied in university in Hong Kong and then came back to China to become the financial elite. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. The elite now stay within China and go to the universities there. And so what you're seeing in Hong Kong is the anger of the dispossessed, the anger of those who are no longer on top, but believe they should be. They still consider themselves, the Hong Kongese tend to consider themselves superior to the Chinese. But they're now having to deal with the fact that the Chinese on the coast are often wealthier than they are. And so Everything But the Girl is bordering on getting banned here because she appears to be trying to take an anti-Chinese position. China is not in the interest of the U.S. Of course not. China is in China's interest. But Hong Kong is China. Hong Kong is not the U.S. The U.S. has absolutely no business whatsoever attempting to intervene in Hong Kong in any way, shape, or form. Yes, I am descended from Thomas Beale, in fact. And so, and remember, the Chinese have a very long, bad idea. You want to talk about optics? It's terrible optics for the U.S. to interfere in Hong Kong in any way. I mean, Bill Hicks says, annex Hong Kong. That's retarded. That's absolutely retarded. And yeah, Hong Kong did. I mean, Hong Kong was owned and controlled by the British for many years. Jay White says, no one is serious about independence, obviously, but more than 2.5 million are not willing to let Beijing continue to absorb Hong Kong into its totalitarian rule. 2.5 million are irrelevant. It doesn't matter what 2.5 million people in Hong Kong think. You know, that's totally and utterly irrelevant. And more importantly, not our problem. Not the problem of the US, not the problem of the United Kingdom, not anybody else's problem. And so, you know, all of this is total nonsense. And it's nonsense of the sort that has needlessly caused uh, all kinds of wars and lots of disruption over the past several hundred years. And so um, I don't know what the objective is. I don't understand what sort of, if there is even any strategic goal here, or if it's just angry lashing out between two competitors, because the war that is going on, the um, the real battle beyond the obvious globalist against all the nationalists, um, the real battle that is taking place worldwide right now is the struggle for global elite status between the Chinese and the Jewish diaspora. It's not an accident that China is heavily moving in to what? The US universities and Hollywood. Where they're probably going to move into next is US media, because the US media has been the ultimate strong point for the diaspora in the United States. Bearable Pain says it correctly. It's a battle of what the real narrative is. Precisely. The diaspora has successfully controlled the US narrative since World War II. And it's to the point now where you see all of these laws where you're not allowed to question certain events, you're not allowed to question certain perspectives. You're seeing redefinitions of terms like America, nation, nationalism, Western civilization, Palestine. Words that have been clearly defined for centuries are suddenly being thrown up in the air, and it's complete nonsense. And so the Chinese, unlike the failed British, unlike the occupied Americans, the Chinese do not have, they're not willing to give an inch on the narrative. They have their own narrative. And so, talking about who's the real enemy, it's not a binary situation. Okay? There's no good guy. There's no one bad guy other than Satan. And whoever is closest to Satan is the worst. And so we're seeing this battle going on, and it's really kind of shocking for Americans, because Americans are not used to being irrelevant. Any American alive today, over the age of 25, is accustomed to thinking of the United States as the best, strongest, most important, most valuable nation in the world. I grew up with that. Many of you grew up with that. Some of you still believe that. But it's no longer true, because the US got invaded by immigrants and functionally taken over in the 60s. And you can even see open discussion of it. When they talk about the former WASP elite. Okay? That was the old American Yankee elite. Remember, it wasn't the entire United States. The United States has been an empire, a Yankee empire, a Northeast U.S. Yankee empire since 1865. It ceased to be what it was prior to the Civil War. It's no longer a voluntary association. So you had one major change in 1865. And then you had another major change about 100 years later, after a sufficient number of diasporans arrived and managed to do their nepotistic infiltration thing and took over the intellectual high ground and the financial high ground. And so it's been it's basically been a occupied imperial capital since the 60s or so. Now, keep in mind, this is normal. This is absolutely normal. If you look at the Roman Empire, the emperors ceased to be Roman after a certain period of time. You started when you would see the year of 7 emperors and that sort of thing. And so if you look at this, then first of all, it tends to calm you down a lot, because what you begin to understand is that nothing's new. What we're seeing is not this shocking revelation like the alt retards would have it. It's just another cycle. It's the end of another cycle of history and the beginning of another one. And you and I are just more or less spectators. All we can do is pay attention to what's going on and do our best to not get stepped on while the giants are fighting. And the more that you understand the situation, the more you understand these cycles of history, then the more likely it is that you can avoid some of the nastier fallout from it. When an empire gets subverted, does an obsession with eradicating racism or something like it always ensue? No, that's just the form that it took. That's just the form that it took this time. There's always preferred peoples. Okay? In an absolute monarchy, the king just says, these are the special people. You're not allowed to touch them. Okay? In a democracy, they need to come up with different weapons and different tools, and they have. I thought you were an advocate for the fight, though. Why fight it if it doesn't matter? I am an advocate for the fight, but you don't understand that there are many fights. The battle between the Chinese and the diaspora is not our concern. It's not our fight. Our fight as Christians and our fight as Americans is very, very different. We want to defend our communities. We're not trying to rule the freaking world. Let those who want to battle to rule the world engage in their battle. It's not ours. So stay out of it and stay away from it. when I say that, I mean, we are surrounded by conflict, and we don't, we're not afraid to engage in conflict, but we're not trying to control the flow of global finances. We're not trying to declare who rules over Hong Kong. And that's why we should never, ever be involved in things like this retarded law that just passed, where the US government is attempting to commit you, me, our families, our communities to a battle that has nothing to do with us. Nothing whatsoever. Most white nationalists tend to globalist ambitions. They do, and that's one reason why I have always rejected white nationalism. White is not a nation. Black is not a nation. Red is not a nation. Those are larger aggregates than nation, and that's why it doesn't work. It's never worked. Pan-Arabism didn't work. Pan-Africanism didn't work. Pan-Europeanism hasn't worked. Banter Bear said, "Ugh, but Christians had such a good thing with America." They did, but that's not. It doesn't exist anymore. America was and is always a British nation, in the same way that Israel is a Jewish nation. But they allowed too much immigration, and the immigrants destroyed that. You might not like it, but that's what happened. There's a reason why, if you read the Declaration of Independence, they talk about our British brethren. They don't say our German brethren, our Dutch brethren, our brethren of the Xhosa tribe in Africa. And so, as Christians, we do care about humanity everywhere, right? No, we don't. In the world, or not of it. You're supposed to love your neighbor. It doesn't say love everybody equally, does it? It says love your neighbor. Love your personal enemy. It doesn't say love everybody. In fact, it even says hate the wicked. So obviously you can't. Aren't American whites a new nation now? No, they're not. Not at all. When Spencer said only whites could have built Western civilization, he was wrong. Of course he was wrong. Richard Spencer is wrong about virtually everything. Haven't you figured that out by now? I mean, if you want to understand what's going on, you need to understand that Chinese culture is very, very different than Anglo culture, than Western civilization, than Jewish tribalism. It's totally different. So here, I would recommend reading these books first. Outlaws of the Marsh. There's actually a series of, I think, 7 canonical works. This is the first one that I recommend. The other one that I highly recommend is The Three Kingdoms, or sometimes known as Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I haven't even opened these because I've read them on my tablet, and these are a great translation that was recommended to me by a friend who actually lives over there. And when you read these books, you understand that a lot of our thinking, a lot of our perspective is um, is totally off. The way that we think is not the way that they think. And so it's just totally ridiculous to try to um, start using our rhetoric, start using our uh, appeals to our emotions and expecting it to have any effect over there. So, why can't new ethnicities emerge? They will in 500 to 1,000 years. You can't force it. Look at Israel. Israel has probably done the best job of trying to create a nation out of a series of very loosely related tribes of anybody. They created a functional society around a language that was essentially dead. Now they speak Hebrew, they read Hebrew, they write Hebrew. It's astonishing. It's an amazing accomplishment of which they should be very proud. But they still haven't managed to do much more than paper over the differences of people who share at least a modicum of ethnicity and DNA. Weren't Hispanics created in a couple hundred years? No. There's such a massive difference between Mexicans and Colombians that it's just ludicrous. There's no Hispanic nation. Do you know who the Mexicans are? Do you actually understand who the Mexica are? Answer that if you have any understanding of who the Mexica are. They're not Indians. They're the Aztecs. The Aztec Empire, it was an empire that was ruled by a specific tribe. And the tribe that ruled the Aztec Empire were the Mexica. Mexico is just another name for the Aztec Empire. The Aztec Empire never died. It just got intermingled with a bit of Spanish blood and had the Catholic Church imposed upon it. But that's what it is. It's the modern Aztec Empire. And so you shouldn't be terribly surprised when you see the astonishing level of violence and death worship that's coming out of Mexico today. I'm not a historian. Andrew said, you should do more basic history like this. Number one, I'm not a historian. Number two, I don't know what other people don't know. This is stuff that, I've known. A lot of this stuff is stuff that I've known for 30 years. I'm an East Asian studies major. My great-grandfather rode with Pancho Villa. So I know a lot about this stuff. I don't even know why I know this stuff. And so, I'm glad you find it interesting. I'm glad you find it useful. But, it's the world is a very different place than you understand based on the mainstream media narrative. The ruling class in Mexico are more from Spain. Absolutely. But they are, they're becoming more intertwined with the, the people and the historical beliefs. Look at their names, you know. Why did Christianity have such a disproportionately large impact in Europe over other nations it has spread to? Well, there's a lot of theories about that. But one of the most important things that it did for Europe was that it banned cousin marriage. And that had a huge change on things. So, anyhow, let's talk a little bit, since we were talking about this, about the leather stuff. Let me get the link to you. For those of you who are aware, we finally, or who didn't hear yet, we finally launched Castalia Deluxe, which is our subscription for the leather-bound books. I'm a little bit disappointed that we haven't already gotten everybody. We had nearly 400 people express interest in this. I'd like everybody who is genuinely interested in this to go ahead and take out the subscriptions now. And the reason is that we're not going to have that many extra products, that many extra books. And so there's the link. I strongly recommend that if you have any interest in this, that you subscribe to it now. I've gotten 16 or 17 emails since the end of the Junior Classics campaign saying, hey, I intended to support the Junior Classics. Can I still get a set? And the problem is that in the case of the Junior Classics, that's not a problem. It's not a problem at all. Both the Demi Octavo and the Royal Octavo hardcover sets are going to be, generally available via retail. But that's not going to be true for the Castalia Deluxe and Castalia Library books, because we're only going to produce a certain number of them. Now, we're not saying that these are like, limited editions that we'll never ever do more of. We're not saying that. But the chances are very slim that we're going to turn around and produce, more of the books that we're producing now. And so, when you want to, like, for example, here's why we're doing this. This is one of my favorite military history books. This is the slim version. It's The Art of War in the Middle Ages by Sir Charles Oman. Charles Oman, in my opinion, is possibly the greatest military historian to live, Martin Van Creveld notwithstanding. But you can see those red books right there. That's his History of the Peninsular War. And this is The Art of War in the Middle Ages. It was the Lothian Prize essay winner in 1884. So this was the original basis of the full book that they produced. This particular book was printed in Oxford, printed by Horace Hart, printer to the university, in 1885. Now, this book is in excellent condition. For some reason, it still has. This was, I think, from the bookstore in Oxford that my wife picked it up for me. And so these things, they last. And so deluxe is $50 a month, and you get a book, a leather bound book, gold spine, the works, and so it's basically $100 a book, and you'll get six books a year. And is there a deadline for it? Well, I would encourage you to, we're going to try to place the order very early in December. And so I would encourage you to subscribe before the end of the month. Now, what we might do, I don't know yet what we're going to do on the off months. We can't have the subscription, we can't make it so that people can sign up for it all the time. What we might do is we might shut access to the subscriptions off on the even months, or if it's possible, if you subscribe on the even month, you'll pay a sign-up fee of $50 so that you'll be caught up right away. Do you plan to release a schedule of which books you will be doing 3 to 4 books in advance? We plan to get to that point, but we're not there yet. We are going to be, like, the first book is The Missionaries. The second book is going to be Marcus Aurelius Meditations, combined with a short and very old life of Marcus Aurelius. So those are the first two. We are going to be doing my own Summa Helvetica and other stories, but I don't know if that'll be the third or the fourth book. These are going to be up to the standard, the higher standard of Easton Press. And we're going to be doing a series if they want. Throne of Bones. Throne of Bones. Can we provide $400 of value for $100? Maybe. If we can do it, we will. I would love to be able to shock everybody and provide that level of quality, for the subscription. I can't promise that yet, but we're going to give it a try. And the more people that subscribe, the lower unit cost we pay, and so the easier it'll be for us to do things like that. I mean, there's a reason. No, see, we wouldn't do. Tim says, I'd be glad to get Throne of Bones over 4 months. We wouldn't do that. If we do it, we'll deliver the whole thing. We'll do, I mean, I'm not afraid to, we don't need to. Would you make a Throne of Bones a 4-month prospect? I would consider it, but I would prefer to figure out a way to make it viable right away. Can we skip on the missionaries and just sign up for meditations on other works? No. Well, I mean, yes, don't sign up and wait until January and then sign up then. But I wouldn't recommend that, because you're going to want to have a copy of the missionaries. First of all, it's a great book. And secondly, remember this, it's the first ever Castelia Deluxe book. Look up what some of the first ever books done by Easton and Franklin Library are worth. We are aiming to not just start competing, but actually compete very, very effectively in the high-end book collection market. And that's why we also have Castalia library, which I'm not pitching to anyone because that's only for the hardcore book collectors. I mean, that's $250. The subscription is $125 a month. We're talking goat skin leather. We're talking special, a unique title page and stuff different than the deluxe. Will there be serial numbers in the books themselves? Not in deluxe, but possibly in library. Is a commitment binding for a year something to prevent people from backing out after one book? No, we'll just see how it goes. I don't believe in trying to hold people. Somebody asked for the subscription. That's where you sign up. On opening physical bookstores. No, we're not going to do that. Missionaries will be the first leather-bound book, no question. Library is going to be epic. But again, it's for if you don't already have a number of like Franklin Library books and signed first editions and folio society books and that sort of thing, don't even think about library. I realize that's like a horrible sales technique, but I genuinely don't want people who are not serious, hardcore book collectors signing up for library. It's total. It's not for everybody. And Shadowrunner says, I'm kind of a big deal. I own many leather-bound books. That's hilarious. No, but the thing is, if you sign up for library and then you realize that you're spending $250 a book, then you're going to cancel the subscription. You're not going to be happy. Whereas with the Castalia Deluxe books, that's a more reasonable price every month, and you're going to be happy with. I know anybody who cares about books is going to be very happy with the deluxe books. I mean, we are hitting the quality as hard as we can, and probably this first book is not going to be as uniformly excellent as the 10th book that we do is. If you look at our track record, Awaken the Nightland was the first physical hardcover that we did. And, we actually just redid it because to make, to install all the improvements that we've made in the 4 years since. And so, but we have learned an awful lot about producing these things. We are working with very, very experienced people. We're working with, the same people that already do this stuff for some of these other companies. And so, it's going to be big. It's going to be great. I don't have any qualms whatsoever about saying, if you have any interest in, Easton Press, Franklin Library, just leather books in general, preserving knowledge, etc., this is something that you should sign up for because it's going to be great. And it's directly connected to what we're doing with the Junior Classics, because that's how, that's how we got into doing deluxe in the first place. And so, so that's what's going on. Anyhow, I see that some of you are already. Somebody said, is there a minimum quantity that we have to hit in order to make it happen? Well, the good news is that the response has been solid, and so we've already hit the minimum that we need in order to make it go. This is already happening. We're already working on the title pages. and we're already working with the bindery. We're already working with keeps going on about. What is your question, Trish? Definitely one of my favorite ones. Oh, she was already banned. Okay, it shows you was unhidden. Okay, Trish, ask your question. How much are the classics and where can I get them from? You can't get them now. The classics, the junior classic, and next month's book is Quantum Mortis, A Man Disrupted. Oh, super chats. Yeah, we got to do super chats. Sorry, I got a little enthusiastic there about the deluxe stuff. Okay. Okay, M. Bolster does his thing. Thank you. DA says, do you think that impeachment is just to condition the public to agree with pushing NATO to Russians' borders and encircle them? No, not at all. I think that impeachment is a desperate attempt to stop Donald Trump before he exposes the corruption and the deep state. They're desperately trying to stop him. I don't think they'll be successful. M. Fisher sends €2. Thank you. Hey, Vox, any insights on why the Japanese are so hard to convert to Christianity? Because they already stamped it out as a Western invasion back in the 16th century. So, there's a whole fascinating history of secret Christians in Japan. And so, to a certain extent, they were very wary of it in a way that I think few other cultures have been. Marie Golay sends $10. Thank you. Elfin says, you were right. Lincoln was worse than Wilson. Yeah, he was. I mean, Wilson was horrible. One of the worst presidents ever, but Lincoln was even worse. Grizzly Mama Bear says, I'm in the rural Midwest and even my remote town has been overrun with invaders. Yeah, I've heard. Can Christian American traditionalists form a new nation down the road? I think they can. I think they will. Tony Droulard says, was U.S. unrest in the 60s also a color revolution? To an extent, yes. I think that that's a fair way to characterize it. If you look at all the CIA involvement in the drug scene, in the classic rock scene and so forth, I think that's a reasonable way to put it. Duralex Sedlex said, I never got the email for the corporate cancer audiobook. If you're signed up if you're a patron, the information is there. So, just go log on to your Patreon account and check. Then you should have it. All right, and we're caught up. So, thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for putting up with the various headaches and so forth. If you haven't signed up yet or subscribed yet to Castelia Deluxe, again, I encourage you to do so because this is not really something. We'll have a few extras that we'll sell, but it's not going to be like our usual, just buy it whenever you want sort of thing. So I definitely encourage you, if you have any interest, go ahead and jump in with both feet, and this is the time to do it. I'm Vox Day. This is the Darkstream.